The sharp sound of a slap echoed through the first-class cabin, breaking the tense silence and causing heads to snap around. A glass of champagne slipped from the hand of an elderly passenger, spilling its golden liquid onto the table. Olivia Price, a poised black woman dressed impeccably in a navy blue suit, sat still. Her expression remained calm as she tilted her head slightly to look at the person who had just lost control. Chloe Hart, the lead flight attendant, stood frozen, her hand lingering midair, her face flushed with anger. "Who do you think you are to behave like that?" she hissed, struggling to maintain the last shreds of her authority. Olivia remained silent, her gaze icy but steady, her composure unshaken. With deliberate calmness, she reached for her phone, her movements carrying an air of defiance amidst the escalating chaos around her. The atmosphere in the cabin grew thick with tension, as if a string had been stretched to its breaking point. Every pair of eyes fixated on Olivia, filled with curiosity and disbelief. Someone whispered faintly, "What kind of power does she hold to stand her ground like this?" This story isn't just about a confrontation. It's a lesson in self-respect and inner strength. If you want to uncover the full event, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. For now, let's go back to the moment when it all began. The lead flight attendant's voice rang out loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I'll ask one last time. Are you moving to the back of the plane? Or do I need to call security?" Her tone was sharp, laced with undeniable contempt. Olivia Price remained as calm as ever. She lifted her head and locked eyes with the flight attendant. "I already said, I'm not moving," she replied. Her voice was steady, almost gentle, yet it carried an undeniable strength. Humiliated in front of everyone, Olivia's restraint and poise concealed a truth no one anticipated, a truth that would soon change everything. The woman they assumed to be powerless would stand tall, revealing her true self. The private jet shimmered under the late afternoon sun, its sleek design a promise of luxury for the exclusive passengers aboard. Inside, the cabin exuded opulence, leather-upholstered seats, gilded accents, and an air of exclusivity that made every entrant feel like a member of the elite. Passengers moved freely, their expensive luggage trailing behind them as they were guided onto the gleaming aircraft waiting on the tarmac. Some scrolled through their phones, while others sipped champagne served by the attentive crew. Light music played softly, creating a relaxing atmosphere. Olivia Price, a composed woman in her late 30s, stepped into the cabin, draped in a perfectly tailored navy suit. She exuded understated elegance. Each step she took was confident yet unassuming, drawing little attention despite the undeniable aura of authority she carried. Her gaze swept over the cabin briefly before settling on her seat. This trip was far from a casual getaway. It was a journey to oversee the rapid expansion of her growing business empire. But no one else aboard the flight knew that, and Olivia had no intention of revealing it. Near the cabin entrance, Chloe Hart, the lead flight attendant, stood poised. Her crisp uniform and sharp features reflected an air of control. She greeted passengers with practiced smiles, warm for some, frosty for others. Chloe took pride in maintaining order on her flights, though her concept of order often relied on appearances and personal judgment. "Welcome aboard," Chloe said to Olivia, her tone devoid of warmth. Right behind Olivia were Mr. and Mrs. Carter, a couple in their 60s exuding the relaxed demeanor of seasoned luxury travelers. Mrs. Carter held a small knitting bag, her fingers ready to dive into her favorite pastime. Mr. Carter clutched a neatly folded newspaper, his eyes scanning the surroundings with mild curiosity. Chloe's smile brightened noticeably. "Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Lovely to see you again." Olivia turned her head slightly, noting the stark difference in Chloe's tone, though her expression remained composed. A flicker of awareness lit her eyes, registering the unspoken dynamics at play. Once everyone was settled, Chloe moved through the cabin meticulously, checking details. She paused by the Carters, her smile warm and attentive. "May I bring you anything before takeoff?" she asked. Mrs. Carter shook her head politely, already engrossed in her knitting. Mr. Carter gestured to his coffee cup, indicating he was content. When Chloe approached Olivia's seat, However, her demeanor shifted. She glanced at Olivia's neatly placed handbag under the seat, her lips pressing into a thin line. She neither smiled nor spoke, merely brushing past without acknowledgement. Something about Olivia unsettled Chloe, not the tailored suit or the quiet confidence, but the fact that Olivia made no effort to demand attention or prove her place among the elite. To Chloe, Olivia didn't belong here. Chloe approached Olivia with brisk, deliberate steps, her lips curled into a forced smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," she began, her tone polite yet dripping with condescension. "I believe you're sitting in the wrong seat." Olivia looked up, her gaze steady. "I believe this is my seat," she replied, her voice firm and unwavering. Chloe maintained her smile, but her tone sharpened. "I don't think so. This area is reserved for premium passengers." Her emphasis on the last words carried loudly enough for nearby passengers to take notice. A woman with perfectly coiffed hair leaned forward slightly, curious about the exchange. Across the aisle, a friendly-looking businessman frowned at Chloe's tone. "Perhaps you should check the passenger list before making assumptions," the businessman said squarely. Chloe's brow arched, irritation flashing in her eyes. "I don't need to check anything," she snapped. "I know who belongs here and who doesn't. Call whoever you need," Olivia said, her voice calm and resolute. "I'm not moving." The curious woman seated nearby gasped softly, her mouth falling open in shock. Across the aisle, the businessman furrowed his brows, leaning forward in displeasure. Chloe turned sharply toward Emily, a young flight attendant who hovered nearby with an anxious expression. "Emily," Chloe snapped, her voice cutting like a knife. "Escort her to the back. Now." Emily hesitated, her eyes darting between Olivia and Chloe. She wanted to speak up, to suggest checking the passenger list as Olivia had mentioned, but Chloe's icy glare silenced her. Left with no choice, Emily nodded hesitantly and stepped forward. Olivia shifted slightly, her calm gaze now on Emily. "You should think carefully about what you're doing," Olivia said, her tone gentle yet laden with unmistakable gravity. Without warning, Chloe lost control. Her hand lashed out, delivering a sharp slap across Olivia's face. The sound echoed through the cabin, crisp and shocking like a lightning strike on a clear day. The entire cabin froze. Gasps rippled through the passengers. Emily raised her hand to her mouth, her wide eyes filled with horror. Even the curious woman from earlier sat motionless, her face pale with unease. Olivia sat upright, her hands resting lightly on her lap. Her face remained calm, though her eyes gleamed with sharp intensity as they locked onto Chloe's. When Olivia finally spoke, her voice was soft yet as cutting as a blade. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The revelation struck like a tidal wave. Olivia Price wasn't just a passenger. She was the owner of the airline. The entire dynamic shifted as passengers whispered in astonishment, realizing the gravity of Chloe's actions. The captain intervened, and Chloe's previous arrogance crumbled under the weight of Olivia's composed authority. Olivia stood, addressing the cabin. Her voice carried strength and dignity. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of assumptions or appearances. This incident will not define us, but the changes we make from here will." Applause erupted, and passengers nodded in agreement. Justice had been served, and Olivia's quiet strength had left an indelible mark on everyone present. Weeks later, Olivia boarded another flight. This time, the atmosphere was warm, professional, and imbued with genuine respect. As she gazed out of the window, the skyline blurring into the horizon, she felt a profound sense of peace. The events of that fateful flight had transformed not just her airline, but also the lives of those who had witnessed the power of standing firm against injustice.